Hello and welcome to the ISG podcast. ISG is the thinking person's guide to full spectrum self-reliance. My name is Aaron, and today I'm here with a very special guest. I'm here with George. George, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Aaron, for having me, first of all. I love your site. I love your articles. I think this is really the thinking man's website. Um, my name is George Fahmy. I'm a Lebanese national. I basically work as a personal protection and firearms consultant. Uh, Basically, I grew up during the Lebanese Civil War from which started in 1975 and ended in 1990. I grew up in I was actually born in 1980, so I grew up. I was a kid for most of the later stages of the war. So I actually lived through the Israeli invasion of 1982, the inter religious wars that occurred during that time, and the fratricide wars that you had between the same religious communities in Lebanon. So Christian on Christian, Muslim on Muslim, Sunnis on Sunnis, Shias on Shias, etc. So basically, what I teach full spectrum approach to self-defense. So it starts basically, first of all, with the mindset knowledge, how to develop a proper mindset to understand why you need to learn those skills. Move on to knowledge about the world, about history, about human nature, about what to do. And then we move on to understanding awareness. So you understand what's going on around you, uh, proper communication skills, how to talk your way out of trouble, how to evade, escape, etc. Hand-to-hand combat is, of course, crucial. Then we move on to improvised weapons, how to improvise weapons from whatever's around you. Edged weapons, edge and point weapons, as I like to call them, because it may not be a knife, it may be a pen or something that you can use to poke people. Firearms, from pistols to rifles to depending on your abilities and your desire, maybe a bit longer range stuff like machine guns, sniper rifles, etc. A super basic understanding of explosives, what they do, how they work, etc., and why it's not a bad. It's a good idea to not be near them when they go bum.
Yes.
And of course, first aids and sustainability, like understanding that you need. It's like self-defense is not just about protecting yourself physically; it's also about protecting yourself emotionally, financially, mentally, etc. So understanding uh, fiat currency, understanding how you can maybe not increase your wealth because it's getting more and more difficult nowadays, but at least safeguard whatever you have in terms of financial security, financial uh, assets, etc., etc.
Yeah,
And yeah, so basically, this is what I teach in a nutshell. I'll go into more details about where I learned what and how in a moment. So
yeah.
back to
Let's
you, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad to have you here. And one of the things your introduction there is probably going to resonate with a lot of our listeners and readers for one reason, that is that it's it's you discussing things that have happened that a lot of people are starting to kind of expect will happen in the United States. And I think it's going
True.
to shock them in some ways too, because I don't think that most people are used to considering some of the things you said. And that's the reality of a war. That's the reality of a civil war. And when we think about it, a lot of times we delude ourselves into thinking that it's not going to be just this violent, all-out, bloodbath, which they very often are. So the things you have to be willing to understand and acknowledge and embrace are not what we see in day-to-day civil life. So I really
Yeah,
appreciate you being here and sharing this perspective.
it's really, and I thank you again. It's an honor to be here. I love your site, guys, and I've been sharing it with my students for the last maybe 5 6 months. The articles, I especially like the way you guys break it down into types of emergency, because this definitely resonates with me and with what's going on in the world overall, like type 1, type 2, type 3. I think this is really good stuff.
That,
Unfortunately, most people think that like shit hits the fan is going to be like the zombie apocalypse, and you're gonna be
right.
able to shoot people anywhere, anytime, and anywhere. And this is like too fucking retarded because, hey, I lived through this. Yeah, I didn't actually kill anyone or stab anyone or do anything that's like too special. I just grew up doing it, and I know what it feels like, and uh, it's most of the time it's going to be calm, interrupted with like periods of like activity or running around to shelter, or just like day-to-day chores are gonna be like different and difficult. So
Right.
yeah.
So it's really interesting to hear you arrive at these same conclusions independently, because before right now we have never really talked about the understanding emergencies and how we categorize them. So that when hearing that you saw that and it resonated with you is very important to us, because we're trying to push that out as a very understandable template that works in reality. When you look at how these situations unfold, they fundamentally change the way you live your life in the case of a 15-year civil war. And we shouldn't expect it to be an all-out constant fight for your life. It's mostly going to be very low intensity with an embedded propensity for higher risk situations that just creep
Yeah.
up. Um, and I think that a lot of times people who haven't spent time in a war zone or a collapsed environment, they kind of gloss over that, and they don't understand that the overwhelming majority of their time is not going to be spent with rifle in hand, waiting to do cool guy stuff. It's going to be
True.
boredom. It's going to be just a lack of resources in a general sort of way, a day-to-day struggle to provide yourself with the basic necessities, food,
Yeah.
clean water, and things like that. We often say it's really hard to be a badass if you're starving to death, and a lot of
Yeah.
times just don't
True.
consider those elements.
Yeah, it's hard to be a badass if you got a fucking dysentery and you're shitting all over the place. You don't even have enough energy to carry a handgun, let alone a rifle and a chest rig and go to war. It's like it's
Right.
the small things that kill you. In a it's like sanitation is crucial. If you have poor hygiene, even if you have the best food ever, if you're only drinking contaminated water, you're gonna be fucked. If you're thinking that in a civil war you're going to be headshotting people 500 yards away with your super fine tuned in rifle with an amazing like scope, yeah, you know what's gonna happen. The other guys, they probably have artillery. They'll probably mortar you or artillery ass you into oblivion. So it's yeah. Usually, the best thing to do is be the gray man.
Yes,
Just dissociate yourself from trouble. Take care of your family. Take care of what's around you. And this is where having a good solid handgun, good unarmed skills, good edge and point skills, having a small concealable rifle that you can use for really close combat, and not like really fancy chest rig. I like the war belt for
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
particular reason. It's you just throw a uh, a just a big coat over it, and it somehow disappears if it's
Yeah.
if it's well engineered, well adjusted to your body. Most people, they have like the fantasy of going to war. It's not a war fantasy. There is a really good game, by the way, that actually shows you what it's like to live through this. It's called This War of Mine, and it's like really grim, really depressing, and it's about civilians growing up, civilians surviving a civil war in some kind of really like it looks like a Balkan country, and they
Okay.
probably stole the idea from Selco, which has a really good course, by the way. Yeah,
Right.
Selco from Shit Hits the Fan School, really good stuff there. So yeah,
Yeah. One of the things. So when we first kind of found you and saw, holy smokes, this guy has some very consistent thoughts with what we're saying, and
yeah.
uh, and that's very consistent with what we've seen in the Croatian Civil War and in Afghanistan and sectarian violence in
Yeah.
Iraq. Uh,
Argentina, the economic collapse in Argentina. Yeah.
Exactly. And so one of the guys I was talking with, one of the ISG guys, we were talking, and he's like, "Is that the guy in Croatia?" I was like, "No, this stuff is
Yeah.
just very consistent. We're seeing the same trends in these civil emergencies that last for years. And I think Selko was saying that Croatian War was about 7 years,
Yeah.
so not quite as long. But again, sanitation, food, boredom, hygiene, discomfort, and then random spurts of violence. And you're not out there patrolling the neighborhood in your
Mm-hmm.
chest for the most part. If you do that, you're going to end up a casualty because, as you said, it's going
True.
to be artillery.
Sniper bait.
Right, right. So it's interesting to see how the people who've experienced these things kind of can agree that there are certain consistencies. I think that's very
Yeah.
important.
True.
So
Human nature is the same everywhere, and we all have like regardless of a creed, race, ideology, we're still human. So basically, we have the same needs and we have the same wants. People want to get stuff that makes them look powerful, feel good, etc., etc. And you need the same basic things, which is basically oxygen, food, and water, and of course security and a little bit of distraction once in a while, so you don't go totally nuts and start shooting people. But yeah, in a war zone, those are the things that are the most important realization. Uh, People in the US especially have to understand, and this is crucial. Like the most prepper, they think they can just store away, get like thousands and thousands of MREs or rations or whatever. The problem with that is you're not taking into consideration the Murphy's law. Murphy's law. Everything that can go bad will go bad in the worst possible way at the worst possible time, and all your backup plans will fail. So if you don't have the skills and you just have stuff stored away, you're fucked. So because you're not going to be able to rise to the occasion, you're going to default to your level of training. If your level of training is I can walk 5 feet without collapsing, that's what you're going to be doing in a fight.
yeah,
So yeah, so it's crucial. It's crucial to have the proper skills. At least have like some caches for weapons, for food, and the most important thing is not the food. It's not the ammo. It's water.
yes,
It's scary because when you realize that I'll fucking die in 3 days if I don't have any water. It's scary. It's really scary. And most people don't want to think about it. Say, oh, I have like 2 years worth of food. I got 10,000 rounds of ammo. I got 25 guns and 100 mags and spare parts. And yeah, this is all awesome. And this is going to be an amazing loot for the well-fed, well-hydrated guy who's gonna stumble upon your corpse and all your good shit afterwards. So
yep, yep, exactly. And the idea that you can leverage just having weapons and skill at arms into getting what you want. I hear that a lot, especially
yeah,
as embarrassing as this is, especially among veterans who say,
yeah,
well, I have the ability to get what I want. Well, yeah, maybe you're basing that off your experience in war where you had a logistic supply chain, you had
exactly.
other keen to kill badasses on your stack who could help you
Mhm.
raid. These
Yeah,
days, in a civil environment where nobody is going to look at you with an M4 and a plate carrier as a hero, you might find yourself in deeper trouble than you want using that approach. So it makes a lot more sense to build in some redundancy, actually have a network of people who can take care of each other, who have a broad array of skills, not just one specialized skill, which is, killing other people. That won't get you that far. It certainly doesn't seem to in any case, anything we've seen.
the problem with I got guns, I can get food and water and sex slaves approach is that you're no longer a good guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And people have a
So
tendency of outing the bad guys in these situations.
yeah.
It's not like people don't know who they are.
Mhm. True, 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 true. It's like you're losing your moral compass, and when you do that, you life is not going to be the same because every war ends, every
Yes.
civil strife ends, and after that, there's gonna be a reckoning. And
Yeah.
trust me, people are gonna fucking remember you. They're gonna, hey, if you murdered a guy, a father and his wife and his 4 kids, and you left a toddler alive, this guy, if he remembers you, and God knows he will, because he's gonna ask around people who killed my family. He's gonna fucking remember you. He's gonna come for you when you're in your 70s and you're stuck in a wheelchair and he's going to torture you for 5 days and nobody's going to give a fuck about you because, oh, this is the crazy guy who killed people during the war. So nobody's going to fucking visit him. And we don't care if the cats eat his eyes. And we stumble upon his bloated corpse after like fucking 5 months. So it's people forget this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And
be a good guy, but don't be too much of a good guy, because if you're really like, oh, I'm gonna do charity, I'm gonna help people, they're gonna stab you with a piss-stained knife, and you're gonna die of septicemia after 5 days because
yes,
you got this guy into your house. Dude, it's simple. You take care of your family. If you want to do charity, wow, amazing. You know what you're gonna do? You take care of your neighbors. You take care of your community of people from your clan, your tribe, people from the same community, people who think the same. You're not going to open up your house and welcome any guy that you found off the street. This is not smart. This is like totally. If you wouldn't do something in their normal world, why would you do it when shit hits the fan?
yeah, definitely. Have there been examples from your experience where people did that? They took in, drifters or refugees from other areas?
Yeah, actually, what Lebanon did as a country, they signed some horrible shit called the Cairo Agreement. It was a secret deal, and they basically allowed all the the refugees, to come and install themselves in Lebanon with their weapons and the families and the support and the logistics and everything. And what happens is, 1975 civil war started between the Lebanese and the Palestinians. So yeah, you bring in people who have a different mindset, different ideology, different uh, moral
Culture.
compass, moral compass, and hey, you can be, it can be a citizen from the same country, but they have a different culture. Like religion plays a huge role, and in Lebanon, uh, similar to what happened in the Balkans, it started as a uh, political divide, and then it grew along sectarian lines, and then it was cemented as a sectarian conflict, and then you had fratricide wars between the same sects, like Christian on Christian, Muslims on Muslim, etc., etc. But uh, before that happened, you had like somehow clear lines of demarcation. So basically, after the Christians and the Muslim had a go at each other, and they cemented their position somehow. This is my AO, this is your, A area of operation, this is your area of operation. And after they've done that, they started killing each other over resources, power, whatever. And as a civilian, if you're not part of a militia, and when I say militia, I mean like a gang of people with guns and stuff,
Mhm.
not a militia in the way that you understand it in the Bill of Rights. It's a bunch of people with guns who are fucked up on drugs and who are looking for sex slaves, food, guns, ammo, gold, whatever, to increase their personal wealth. So uh, those people, they're gonna be at war. It's like gangs. When you have gangs fighting each other, a civilian is always gonna get fucked if he gets in the middle. So
Yes.
dissociate yourself from this. And
That's
this is where I want to plug in something like a really good book that I really like, and a really good author that I really like as well, John Mosby, who has
yes.
Mountain Gorilla.
Mountain.
Yeah, he's like, I fucking love this book, like Forging the Hero. This is
Yes.
my go-to book. It's like, read this book and you'll understand what you need to do to protect yourself and your family when shit hits the fan, because it's gonna happen. If it doesn't happen in the next 5 years, it's going to happen in the next 20 years. It's going to happen in the next 30 years. If you look at history, you'll see that every empire, every superpower is eventually going to disintegrate into smaller powers that are going to start fighting each other for control. So, yeah, if I'm gonna plug in another guy who's like writings I really like. Is a bit different. Matt Bracken, who wrote Enemies Foreign Domestic,
Mhm.
and he has a really good article called the Civil War 2.0, and he discusses what will probably happen in the US if the situation stays the same. Like politically, it keeps on deteriorating the same.
I think I've read that one. I think somebody sent it to me to say, "Hey, look,
Mhm.
what's your take on this?" And I couldn't find a whole lot of fault in the way he was thinking. And Don Grill is an exceptional resource. That guy he's very much on the same page as we are. So it's not at all surprising to hear that you also appreciate his
Of
work.
course.
Um,
Hey, good information does not replace good information. It just adds to it. So it's your responsibility. If you have people that actually depend on you as an instructor, as a family, as a father, as a as a provider, it's your responsibility to cast your ego aside and to get the best information and to share it with people who are who think like you, like like-minded individuals. So you need to
right.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there's really a missing element of cooperation. We're starting to see it kind of establish itself a little bit more in the tactical communities in the U.S., but the
Yeah.
vast majority of it is just kind of we call it LARPing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, 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 yeah.
guys
Yeah.
dressing up and going to the range and just showing off. But the people who are serious about it, I view this kind of like. The turn of professional wrestling in the 1990s. People loved it. It
Exactly.
was really
Yeah.
popular, which it's all fake and everybody knows that. So pretty soon you start seeing the rise of MMA and all these people who've been wasting their time with fake shit look at it and they're like, wait a minute. This is real over here. This is actually
True,
something you can watch and take something away from.
true,
Uh,
true. At least you can appreciate it and you can learn from it. Hey, it doesn't mean that you can apply all of that stuff in a real fight because
right.
you have like three elements that you don't have in MMAs that you have in a real fight, which are CAP, consent, awareness, and preparation. You're consenting to fight. You're aware of the rules and the environment, and you're physically and mentally prepared for the fight. The bad guy is going to
Right.
always attack you when it's least advantageous to you and most advantageous to him. So yeah, you can still learn a lot from MMA and BJJ, which are sports that I absolutely love and train in. So
Yeah, I think they're very applicable for the fitness. But right, we were actually talking about this last night with a friend of ours. It's very into the training situation and scenarios, and we were talking about it. And it's just you have to understand that when you have a martial competition, there are those elements you've mentioned. The guy can tap out, and he's still going to go home and get paid. You know, in the street, things get a lot more complicated, and there's a strange divide here where people say that the street level martial art or street level fighters rather aren't skilled and then the skilled guys aren't street fighters, and I think that they're both wrong. They need to just kind of accept that you need to mesh the two. You need the fitness, you need some technical work, you need to be aggressive, and that's the big thing is most professional fighters are aggressive in a very controlled way. When you see a
yeah,
guy absolutely lose his shit and start flinging bricks or hitting people with chairs or whatever else in a knockdown drag out fight, there's just a
yeah.
different level of intensity. It's not the same, but
True, 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 true. Most people forget that bad guys don't need to train like an MMA fighter to be effective. They don't need to be a BJJ black belt to be effective. They don't need to be collegiate wrestlers to be effective because they may know like a couple of dirty moves. Like I distract him, I stab him in the kidneys, and he's down. He's pissing blood. I'm like roughing his pockets and taking my like his shit, which is now my shit, and go home.
mhm.
Most people forget that bad guys have something most martial artists don't have, which is real world experience hurting people. They
Yeah.
don't have. It's you ask the experience, not the learn. We have a proverb in Arabic that says uh, which technically means you ask the guy who had the surgery done on him, not the doctor who's actually operating, because the guy who got the surgery done on him knows the pain, knows what it feels like to recover, etc., etc., etc. The other
Sure.
guy, he's just doing the surgery. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It makes a lot of sense to me. And, another one of our core concepts at ISG is the spheres of violence. So one of the things that we're actually going to do a podcast on this, so I'll just touch on it very briefly, but we have to understand that it's not the same. The differentiation between personal and interpersonal violence is very different, or institutional. so if you're a part of an institution like being a police officer and you're on call and you get into a fight in the streets, it's not the same as if you get into a fight in the streets because it's something personal. For
True.
the officer, it's a job and you're going to get paid, you have a legal tailwind, etc. If this is somebody who's pissed off and wants to hit you over the head with a brick because your cousin stole their weed or something like that, it's a whole different. They know where you live. They have no compunction. They'll, throw things through your windows or shoot up your house or so on. It's very personal, and we tend to forget just how raw real violence is because most of us are just not connected to it.
True. True. You want to know about violence? You ask the cops. You ask the EMT personnel. They will know more about violence than a spec ops guy, because a spec op guy is sent to a location. He has logistical support. He gets the job. He goes home. That's it. He may have amazing physical and tactical abilities, which is like it's basically like an MMA guy. You take an MMA guy, you put him against another MMA guy, or against any guy in a ring with rules, and he will wipe the floor with him. But you take this same MMA guy, you get him drunk, you get him high on coke, you throw him into a pub in a sleazy part of town, and you take the crappiest, most underfed, and weakest motherfucker out there, but who has experienced stabbing people and shooting people and beating people and sucker punching people, and he will really make like short work of the MMA guy. So it's all about context and environment. Those are like really important elements. You mentioned spheres of violence. You have the interpersonal and you have the institutional. Most people forget that as a police officer, as a soldier, you got a state that's behind you. It's taking care of your needs. It's backing you up. So let's say you shoot a guy. Let's say you're a corrupt cop in a really crappy police department, right? And you shoot a guy. The department is gonna back you up because of like, oh, we're all brothers, right? Even if you're wrong, for the simple reason that it would set a precedent, and people, even if you have like one rotten apple in a really good basket of good apples, people don't want the stench to affect them and to change the way they've been living. So they'll just sweep it under the carpet, etc.
Yeah, issue with that in the U.S. The perception of law enforcement has been suffering recently because it's become very high profile anytime that there's a bad shoot, and it ignores the millions of interactions on a daily basis that are generally positive. And our approach to anybody in the profession of arms is that we'll categorically respect everybody, but it's individuals. You have some really, really excellent officers, and you have some that are not really that good and shouldn't be behind a badge. And unfortunately, the profession of arms does kind of draw some bad apples on occasion. So when you have to look out for those guys, you have to clean up their messes. It damages the whole department's efficiency.
Exactly.
And it damages public opinion. And, it also plays into corruption, which I think is another topic we should discuss, is because Lebanon has had issues with corruption, as have most countries in that same state. So, tell us a little bit about that. How has corruption affected daily life during the Lebanese civil war and after?
You didn't have a state per se to actually say, oh, the state is corrupt, the police force is corrupt, because you had militias taking over areas, and basically they created their own states. Like, for example, in the Christian parts of Lebanon, the Matan Kassawain areas, East Beirut, you had the Lebanese forces militia. They became more of an army at the end, and they technically were the good guys for the Christians because they protected the Christians, they provided food, water, medicine, etc., etc. But of course, now because everybody starts as a good guy at first, and then you start getting corrupted by the power, by the love of money, by the love of the easy life, and so you started having the 10% tax. Oh, give me 10% of what you're making. Will offer you protection, but I don't need protection. You guys are protecting the entire area. Yeah, we'll protect you from certain less palatable elements from our units who are getting drunk and on drugs, etc., etc. So you started having some of this stuff, which it became part of the culture. So now, even though the civil war has ended, you have a lot of people who grew up on this culture of corruption, this culture of bribery, this culture of you can't do anything to me, you fuck, because I am a member of this party, which is now a ruling party in the Lebanese government, and we penetrated the government institution to the highest level. We can smuggle anything we want and have the cops actually bring it in to us. So it's kind of ugly. But you adapt, you improvise, and you overcome. So you don't have any other ways to dealing with stuff like this, because even though it's not a failed state, it's a state that's failing because it's
Sure.
unable to fight corruption. And anywhere where you start having like more restrictive laws, you're gonna start having more corruption. The most corrupt country on earth was the utopian paradise of the Soviet Union. You had more fucking black market stuff than you had in the real market. So people say, "Oh, communism, it's so perfect." Blah blah blah. It's all fucking bullshit. It's all bullshit. People are never gonna work their ass off for peanuts. If you don't
No.
give them something, they're gonna fucking work for it. So if you get paid the same as a guy who has an IQ of 50, why would you wanna create and discover stuff? People create and innovate and discover stuff easier because of need or because of gain, personal gain, community gain, fame, recognition, etc., etc.
Yes.
So yeah, and most people, like for example, the more bureaucratic a state becomes, like unfortunately the US is becoming now,
Oh,
it's moving from being a republic to being an empire, which is what happened to the Roman Empire. They moved from being the Roman Republic into becoming the Roman Empire, and we know how this ended.
yep.
Uh, the more bureaucracy, the more the potential for corruption. The more the potential for corruption, the more, and this is like really weird, the possibilities of increasing your freedom. Hey, if because like the Bulgarians have a very nice saying, they say if a problem is not solved with money, it is solved with a lot more money. So corruption,
Yes.
yeah. Hey, they lived under the Ottoman boot for 700 years, if I'm not mistaken, at least 500 years. So they learned all about corruption,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
if you're like a different religion and you're being like dominated by a very aggressive religious ideology. You start making some changes, you start adapting, you start finding ways of giving it to the man in a way that is discreet and that helps you make money. Most criminals, they're actually giving the finger to the state because they're operating and they're doing what people want them to do, and they're making money out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that it should be obvious to lawmakers and politicians is that the more laws that you have, the more opportunities you create. Just like you said,
Mhm.
people find a way to provide those things, and the demand isn't going to go away just because there's a law as an obstruction. The type of people
Sure.
who want to do these things aren't really paying attention to the laws, and frankly, the the distance from the average citizen to the politician's desk is a long ways. So, what's
Yeah.
happened in our case in Washington, D.C., what the politicians there are discussing very rarely affects my life here,
Mhm.
3,200 miles away. So I really don't care in a lot of cases. It comes down to, is it moral? Is it ethical? And that's me. There's other people who that's not their calculus for making decisions on what they should and shouldn't do. So, we have to kind of keep those things in mind. And I think that as legal infrastructure and law grows and becomes so invasive that it becomes utterly unenforceable. And then you really have a situation where whether or not the state has failed, it has to grab at too many straws and it can't keep up with them all. So it gets easier and easier for people to slip through the cracks with petty crimes. I think that's really where we're at here in the US. And
Yeah.
eventually, like you said, it's a slide just like the Roman Empire. As soon as your conquests aren't paying for your habits anymore, that's when you start having problems. I think we're just about there.
Yeah, exactly. You know what really helped me grasp this stuff? The concept of the state. The more it grows, the weaker it becomes fundamentally. Like in terms of how do you call it? In terms of legitimacy, is basically the writings of Bill Boppert. zerogov.com, like a really good website. He's a bit more on the anarcho-capitalist side.
Hmm.
I'm more a bit for like a little bit more closer to having like a bit more of a republic back. But still, if you go back and you read um, people like Lysander Spooner, etc., you start realizing that the more individual freedom, the more and the smaller the state is, the more how do you say it? The less hassle the state itself will have, because you don't have to control people. You're having people uh, uh, police themselves by taking care of their own stuff, having their own communities, having like small federations. Like
Sure.
this type of political system really works. It used to be wonderful in Switzerland. Now the socialists took over, so it's fucked.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
well,
I cry for my friends in Switzerland because it's like they used to be able to protect themselves and buy guns and stuff. Now the socialists are starting to introduce horrible laws and shit. It's Europe is like fairly doomed uh, because they have gotten so used to like
entitled.
yeah, exactly, entitled, sorry, yeah,
Entitled.
they're entitled to stuff, and the more freedom you give people, the less people feel entitled, because
Yeah.
hey, they have to take care of their own shit. Hey, you're free to do a lemonade stand anywhere you want, so you don't need to go to the state to get a permit to actually have a guy build you your little lemonade stand to actually buy the stuff that you actually sell. You need to go to do everything out of your own sweat, blood, and tears, which is a good thing because it builds up character. Grit
Sure.
builds up character. Um, the state's only job in this particular case is to protect the border, which are going to be set along cultural linguistic lines, no
Mm.
longer like a nation, uh, like adding areas that have absolutely nothing to do. The only job of the state will be to protect the citizenry from outside attackers. And
Sure.
in case they do fail, the citizens are gonna pick up their arms because they got a shitload of them, and they're gonna face the attacker in guerrilla style warfare and wipe the floor with them. So
Right.
yeah. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm jumping. I jumped to a different tangent. So
No, this is all relevant. I mean, one of the things that we talked about a little bit, I think before the podcast actually started, was Glub's Fate of Empires,
yeah,
and the things that you're discussing just they take my mind right back to there. And if anybody's listening, you have not read John Glub's Fate of Empires, it's a free PDF. It's about 25 pages, maybe a little less, and it's a very deep read. Suggest you break it up and read it, a little bit at a time, but it to a T describes how great empires fail. And
true.
if you look at it objectively, that's what's happening here in the U.S.
Yeah, true. It's a sad state of affairs to grow up during the decaying part of the empire because you have to learn a bunch of skills that your grandfather probably knew and lived through, and it was absolutely day-to-day operations for him. But for us, it's gonna be, oh fuck, I have to hunt, I have to trap, I have to fish, I have to build my own stuff, I have to prep, I have to put water, I have to prepare myself for all this stuff that you expect the government and the grocery store and the police and the military to give you. You have to fucking take care of it on your own now or as part of your community, and it's scary. And this is why because most people want the easy way out. They don't want to fucking bust their balls doing anything. They just want to have like, oh, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I just want to have fun and watch TV, or oh, what's happening with the Kardashians now, and who fucking gives
Yep.
a fuck.
Yep.
But the
Weed and
thing
video
is,
games.
yeah, most people don't want to take care of stuff that takes them out of their comfort zone, and
Right.
I think it's crucial. To you need to be taken out of your comfort zone. You need to learn new skills. You need to keep your ego in check.
Yeah.
You need
Absolutely.
to do all this stuff. And,
Mhm.
hey, if you don't want to do it, fine. But at least know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and know who you can rely on to take care of what you can do. Like, for example, I'm a horrible driver. If you ask any of my friends who drive with me, they fucking like cross themselves 50 times. They, they, they put the whole rotary before they get anywhere. So I let my wife drive.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you suck at first aid, at least have a good buddy who is good at this stuff. At least have a couple of people who are doctors in your team, in your community. If you're really good with guns, then you can take care of security, while somebody else who's really good at canning or preserving food or like a really good handyman, let them take care of the stuff they're good at. Hey, specialization is for insects.
Yes.
You cannot only know one thing. You need to be able to know a shitload of skills. A lot of skills, and this is where I disagree with most people teaching self-defense, even reality-based self-defense. It's a big community. I was a part of it, and then I just moved a bit away from it because it's like you're only focusing on hand-to-hand combat,
Right.
and only okay. Even if you're doing scenario work and you introducing edged weapons and handguns and you defending against this stuff. But hey, how good are you in how can you survive a fucking mob of 50 people trying to murder you because you did something that was culturally inappropriate in the countries that you're visiting?
Yes.
It's like fucking retarded.
And
So
we're
it's
starting to
crucial to
see.
understand. Yeah,
We're
sorry, go
starting
ahead.
No, we're starting to see things like that in the U.S. And it's probably a little overplayed for media because media is all about drama. But we are seeing, mobs suddenly show up on the streets in major cities, and all of a sudden you have, blockades, and cars are being stopped and turned over, and you're not going to be able to shoot your way out of that situation.
Yeah, flash mobs, and the problem is, a lot of people, they say, oh, I'm gonna go and demonstrate for my rights. Well, you know what? You know what's gonna happen when you're gonna go and demonstrate for your rights? A, you're not going to change anybody's opinion because the other side thinks they're good guys too.
Yep.
B, you're gonna attract attention, so you're gonna have your picture taken by the security apparatus of the state that you're in. It may be your own, it may be another one, but those information never go away. C, you're going to increase your risk of being brutalized either by law enforcement who are trying to break up a riot and looting, and they thought that you were there, and because hey, you dressed up the same way as everybody else, and they're gonna start putting batons to skulls without asking you, oh, are you one of the guys who were actually looting? No, boof, they just hit you.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry.
I said, yeah, right, exactly. You don't, it's putting yourself in a position of risk that's unnecessary. You're not going to go out there and probably change things in a day. And, bless their hearts, political activists are necessary. I've never felt
Yeah, of
to,
course, and it's crucial. But you don't demonstrate just like you don't just do a walk. You want to demonstrate, you go and you demonstrate in front of a Capitol House, in front of your senator's house, in a place where you can actually sway public administration's opinion, not public opinion, because public opinion is basically manipulated by the media.
right.
I should call them propagandists because this is what they are. Uh, at least in the Soviet Union, people used to be honest about it. They used to say, "Oh, this is the state propaganda." In the
Yeah.
US, them, yeah, it's a CNN, Fox News, MSPN, whatever. It's like uh, media is propaganda. Once you start, you start listening to the stuff, they're gonna mold you into who they want you to be. So if you want
Yes.
to be a good activist, you want to fight for gun rights, you go and you sign up with the Firearms Policy Center. These people are doing a shitload of work. They're really doing lots of work. You want to pretend you're doing something, you go and you give money to the NRA. We're going to take your money and fuck over you.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, and this is where like people start being good guys, and then because of power and money, they start devolving. The NRA is one example. Government is another example.
Yeah.
So yeah, going back to the thing about the mobs, you got like four things are gonna happen. You're gonna basically get get your picture taken by the state apparatus. You're gonna not. You're basically not going to swear public opinion. You're gonna make the other side more thirsty for your blood. You're going to increase your risk of violence at the hands of the state, basically the state apparatus, so the police, the riot control police, etc., etc. And number four is, most people don't think about this, is you're going to increase your risk of being victimized by one of the guys from the other side, who is going to make it his personal vendetta to actually find where you live, take care of you and your family. So this is something, especially if you're talking about like hardcore people like Antifa. These people, they're gonna hunt you down and they're gonna fuck you up. If they think you're a bad guy, they think that killing you would make Marx or Lenin like smile in their graves. But it's like, uh, be the gray man, be the gray person. Get yourself, dissociate yourself from stupid situations, so you increase your chances of actually going home and taking care of your family and your friends.
Right. And one of the things that we often talk about in spheres of violence is, we most of what we know in the martial or self-protection community is trickling down from special operations and things like that. And now, I have great respect for all these guys, so it's not a criticism of them, but a lot of times what we're getting is conventionally unconventional. So we're talking about guys who know how to do foreign and internal defense, how to raise militias and fight with them. Those are very important things. But what they're not is criminals. They're not thinking like, I don't need to raid this compound. I'm just going to throw some Molotovs through the window, and when these guys come out, I'm going to hit them with a suppressed 22 I bought at, pawn shop with a pop can over the end of it. And that's it. And there you and your wife and kids are laying out in a pool of blood in the firelight of your burning house. And that's the kind of warfare we can expect. Not being hit one-on-one, in a martial competition. It's kind of like the same analogy of in the streets versus in the octagon. So we understand it's a very, very different type of warfare.
Yeah, exactly. And most people forget, and this is like something I kind of thought about like maybe 7-8 years ago, and I actually started explaining it to my students and to my friends. I call it the circle of violence. Violence will always start as a circle, right? And you have it like, if you take a circle, you draw a circle and you put one dot on the circle. This is the start of a violent act, right? And you follow the circle, right? It's going to lead to pain, grief, suffering, anger, sadness, misery. It will either lead to you forgiving and forgetting, which is extremely fucking hard for us, even if like we follow cross teaching and we say, oh, it's a Christian thing to do. Yeah, but it's fucking difficult to forgive a cunt who actually stole $2 million worth of equipment that you and your friends bought and stored away. So yeah, that's difficult. So it will lead to anger, hatred, and the need for revenge, which will lead to preparation for a violent act, which will lead to an act of violence. So technically, you're stuck in this vicious circle because your bad guys that you just fucked over. Hey, maybe you this guy. Let's take an example. You were mugged in the street by a big, strong guy with a star tattoo on his face, right? And it was dark, and he only saw the tattoo. And basically, what happened is this guy mugged you and beat the shit out of you. You go home, you're feeling like shit, and basically you start thinking, oh man, next time I'll fucking carry a knife, I'll fucking carry a knife, I'll fucking carry a gun, whatever. And you start like going fucking paranoid, and you start training, but you have different ways of training it. You can train in a healthy way, which is basically giving you the skills to protect yourself and to protect other people, or you can train with the desire to actually get back at the world. And most people who have been hurt, and I've been hurt, I was like, I'll get back to this in a moment, but I was severely bullied when I was in high school. It was like a total mess, but I never decided to take the path of least resistance, which is just get back at the world by being evil, by hurting people, by being a bully yourself. So what happens is you get ready for violence. And let's say you're walking down the street and it's dark and you have a guy, big, strong guy, with a tattoo on his face. who comes over and he's asking you for the time, and he's like, he's not even violent. He's just like asking, "Hey man, I'm sorry, I lost my watch. What time is it?" And you just stab the guy 50 times because hey, you're living in your own like you're in your own swamp of poison and hatred and misery and bad memories, and you let this influence the way you're looking at the world. So it's a vicious circle, and the best way to avoid getting stuck in the circle of violence is to avoid it
Yeah.
by having proper awareness, by avoiding bad situations. You're not going to get stuck in this shit, and this is going to basically avoid all of the stuff that we're training for.
Hmm.
I hope to God, like all the stuff we train for, like building shelter if you're a refugee and you're running away from civil war, shooting like hand-to-hand combat, edge and point combat, firearms training. I hope to God we're just playing, we're just like stabbing training partners with training weapons, etc., etc. But unfortunately, if you don't have awareness and you get stuck into this like if you fuck around in terms of awareness and you get stuck into a situation, you may be stuck in the circle of violence and you may like deviate from your path. You may lose your moral compass and basically go to like start doing like becoming the bad guy, which is what we want to avoid. I'm sorry if my point that just went around in circle, but yeah.
No, I think that you've made an important distinction between training for the right reasons and training for the wrong. In fact, there's a lot that we could circle back around to. You know, the whole discussion on skills, the lost abilities of our grandparents. You know, a lot of this plays directly into the ISG
Yeah,
ethos, and that
true.
be a repository for those skills. Do it for the
Yeah,
right reasons. You know, the entire concept of carrying the fire is
yeah,
about the things that ISG is really about. They go back to building the skills for the right reasons, maintaining the culture of our forefathers, and that's not everything, you know, because we can look back on things and say this was not right, like racism. It's
yeah,
good that yeah, we're moving away from that. We're realizing that hey, culture is more important than ethnicity, but maintaining the things that they did right, their hard work ethic, the lack of complaining when you know there's a task to be done, the ability
true.
to work with your hands, you know, the ability to hunt, fish, and provide for yourself, um, and all of that stuff kind of it feeds into the headwaters of carrying the fire, which is the concept
Yeah,
of when things really get dark, we've got to have people who are capable of doing that. We've got to have people who can take these skills and sit other people down, and they have the lack of ego and the competence to teach them. You know, being
definitely.
teachers. So it's always nice to hear other people kind of arriving at those same conclusions independently because it shows a certain sort of consistency. You know, and when we say, hey, this is consistent, just like your experience with the Civil War versus Croatia or Argentina. We can
Yeah,
say, hey, look, these are the common spots we need to firm up first. Once we get those done, you know, then we can stockpile bullets. But first, we've got to be able to not die of dysentery. So,
true.
yeah, in the same way, when we talk about like these are the attributes or the cultural characteristics, philosophical or the skills that traditionally over thousands of years of human history have served us well.
Yeah,
That's what we should focus on. So
definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Amen to that. Amen to that, bro.
So let's see. We were going to talk a little bit about some of the specifics of the situation in Lebanon. And one of the things that I like and appreciate is that you were young, because a lot of the people that we have at ISG, in fact, one of our predictors of success, like if a person is going to really click with the material, is do they have a
Yeah,
family they're responsible for?
true.
So your experiences as a child will help
Yeah.
the people who are currently fathers and mothers know a little bit more of how their children are going to react to that crisis. Could you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that? Like, tell us some of your memories.
Yeah. The thing is, man, when you grow up in a civil war, uh, you don't know that stuff is abnormal because for you it's like everyday thing. So one of the things that I remember as growing up as a kid is you need to carry your own weight. So we used to go down with my sister, my mom, and my sis because my dad used to work abroad. You need to go down and actually get water, drinking water, because tap water was like horrible. If you drank it, you have Beirut belly, meaning diarrhea for 5 days and vomiting and all that stuff. So it was undrinkable. It still is undrinkable, by the way. So like one of the things that one of the reasons why I say that the civil war in Lebanon is a type 2-3 thing, it's because certain things have changed before the war, like in the late 60s. You could actually drink tap water and not die. Nowadays, it's gone. So we used to go down and actually carry gallons of water. For this is for cooking and for drinking. Most important thing is to have fresh water at home. Number two is we used to buy as much food as we could, because it's not like we starved or anything. Like, thank God, it was not as bad as let's say in the Balkan. But it was not cool because it's like you had like limited ability to get certain food. And don't forget, we also had at the same time we had hyperinflation and somehow an economic collapse. Three Lebanese liras were worth $1, and then it went up to 2,000 liras for $1. Now it's stable at around for the last 18 years or 15 years. It's been like 1,500 liras is basically $1. So it's been somehow stable, but it never goes back to the way it was before.
Sure.
People's mindset, people's way of life, people's way of thinking and looking change. Like my generation, people who grew up during the Civil War, like we grew up hearing bombings, car bombs, snipers, artillery barrage, electricity being on and off depending on the time of day and if the state was able to provide for power or not. It basically developed a culture of grit. You start getting used to basically improvising and doing stuff like this. Like you couldn't have like regular baths every day. You had sponge baths every day, but regular baths like maybe every 5 days, 4 days a week, depending on water availability. You started like learning a few things. Like when you start hearing explosions, this is the time for you to get into a room that is away from any windows, so you don't get any shrapnel. That is basically like a T intersection in a corridor. This is like perfect. You started getting used to sleeping in bathrooms and on the floor underneath your bed because you don't want to have any shrapnel. You start looking for like if you're on the streets and people start bombing, first thing you start to do is you start praying. Then you start running, preferably running while praying, and you get your ass out of there. You find shelter because don't forget, civilians were being bombed by the Syrians. As a state, I'm talking about the Syrians. They were also being bombed by the different protagonists of the war, like the Christian side used to bomb the Muslim side, and the Muslim side used to bomb the Christian side. I was a Christian living in Muslim West Beirut, so it's like fratricide fire. That pretty much sucked. And the thing is, sometimes you're stuck. You're unable to leave the area because the roads are locked. You have snipers on the intersections. You can't move away from the area. So as a kid, you start realizing, okay, this may be. It may be better to not go there. It may be better to stay inside. I don't remember what article I read about it recently. It was a really good article. It was about basically age and the understanding of mortality. And most children under the age of 7 or 10, I'm not too sure about it, they actually have no concept of death. They understand loss and sadness and stuff like this, but they don't understand death. So you start maturing a bit earlier than kids living in, let's say, a first world country where you're not having people trying to murder you for absolutely no valid reason whatsoever. So it's one of the things that we had as kids is you start asking the proper questions to understand the environment you're in and the context you're in. For example, um, you may be Christian and you're playing with other Christian kids, but you have no idea if the other kids are the other kids' family are siding with one political party against another political party. And if you're aligned with one, you need to start asking specific questions in a very discreet way, sometimes not discreet at all, just to understand if this is one of you or it's one of the others. So
Sure.
yeah, you start understanding this stuff like pretty early, and if you don't, you'll learn fast.
So one of the things that's really fascinated me about your writing is that it came at a really good time for what ISG has been talking about. I think the article you're referencing was our Children in Violence 101,
Yeah,
where we kind of discuss the normal child doesn't really develop a sense of mortality. So
true.
when we talk about these things and we discuss
Oh yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah. I read. I think I read it on your site, and
yeah,
I actually went back and read the detailed psychobabble thing about what actually happened. Yeah. Yeah. It was on you guys' site.
yeah, and we went from that to the Robbers Cave experiment, in which Muzaffar Sharif had done an experiment using 11 and 12-year-old boys who were factioned off, and he observed their psychological reaction to being put in competition with another group of children. And
Yes.
we
Yes.
see
Yes.
that
Exactly.
understanding, yeah, of us and them. It, Kids take that very early, and in fact, I think that we could probably make a safe assumption that they start identifying, friend versus foe before they really even have a full concept of what life and death mean. So we're dealing with some human psychology that's very deeply rooted, and it has a lot of predictive outcomes in terms of what can we expect if people are brought up in the environment of this person is safe, that person could kill me, or that person could kill my family, or has killed members of my family. Um, and it becomes very hard to differentiate between the individual and the group. And of course, that gives rise to sectarian violence.
True, true, true. It's not just sectarian violence, because you actually, and this is like it's extremely sad, but you actually had brothers who were fighting on different sides in the conflict. Like both were Christian, and I'm not sure if it's somebody that my parents know, but like two brothers. One was with the Lebanese forces, which is the Christian militia that actually started working as the protector of the Christians at early during the war, and then became a bit more like uh, like they started fucking up a bit more in terms of corruption and not actually being good guys. And on
Yeah.
the other hand, you had the Lebanese armed forces that represented the state, which were controlled by General Michel Aoun, which is the current president of Lebanon,
Yes.
but he,
Right.
he allied with Hezbollah. So yeah, he actually had a guy in the Lebanese army who actually shot and killed his own brother, who
Oh,
was in the Lebanese forces, and he actually knew he was actually fighting and killing his own brother. So yeah, that's like fucking horrible, man.
yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so
There's nothing
so
good.
as children, you may not understand the them against us directly, but you realize it by seeing your family, your parents interact. So basically, you imitate, you start aping your parents in terms of behaviors, and you start learning, for good or bad, what you have to do in certain specific situations. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really tough to imagine for most of us in the modern West being in a fight that could literally kill a family member. I think that we often leave those things out when we start talking politics or things like that. But we're getting to the point where I feel like a lot of our culture has become so adversarial that it you can see how it would build up to that, to where somebody's belief in one particular thing is so strong that they cannot be persuaded to agree to disagree. And
Yeah.
we try to stay very apolitical at ISG. We think that eventually all of these things, and I think you said this as well, all of these conflicts eventually return to some degree of normalization. And if you're the guy who is out there being an asshole and you manage to survive, well, those people are going to still remember you.
Yeah,
And you're still going to have to
exactly.
live with your own conscience. So, we try to preach avoidance in all regards. So, if you can avoid a street level confrontation, it's great. If you can avoid a civil war, that's great too. We need
Yeah,
to we need to be entirely capable of defending ourselves in those situations and taking action.
exactly.
Very good at
Exactly.
it.
So you need this, like there is a Japanese proverb that says it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And
Yes,
this, like,
exactly.
it's like beautiful because if you don't, it is like most people say, oh, violence is bad, violence is bad. And it's fucking bullshit. Violence is a tool. It's like technology, it's like fire, it's like anything. You need to be able to dominate it, to control it. So it is your servant and not it's your servant and not your master. So you can be a criminal and using violence for evil, or you can be a good guy using violence for good. Protecting your family and your loved one is violence. It's and if you and there is another author I actually love, and I actually bought his books, but I haven't had time to actually read them all. It's Jack Donovan, and he says
Oh, mhm.
violence is truly golden. And I take this and I don't know if he said it or I came up with it. I fucking forget. It says like violence is the only universal currency.
It's true. Violence shouldn't be our first or only resort, but
Yeah,
without it, where would we be? We would join history's book of the infinite dead of people who rolled over and couldn't fight back or would not fight back. So yes, to say that categorically violence is bad, violence is sometimes the only answer, and it is universally.
exactly.
Um,
And most people, and there is another problem. Most people look at violence as if we start violence, that's it, it's over. We will only use violence. And no, this is wrong because you may start using violence, and then when your opponent is crushed, you may not need to deliver the coup de grace. You may not need to do it. You may need just to contain your enemy in a way that does not allow him to rebuild.
right.
And this is a very interesting quote by Abraham Lincoln, and he said, "Am I not destroying my enemy when I turn him into my friend?" And this is something most people they don't even consider it. So if the problem is linked to resources, and there is a way after you demonstrated that you have the means to utterly demolish this person, if there is a way to find a compromise or an alternative way to actually utilize this person's aggression, power, violence, whatever, in a way that benefits both of you, then why not? At the same time, if the opposition, the opposing force is a bunch of pedophile, Satanist people who only want to do mess and raid and kill, then in this case, I'm sorry, yeah, I think total annihilation is the only solution to protect your own people. So
We have a strange duality of thought, and I don't know if this is mostly just in the West right now, or if it's
mhm.
endemic and more broadly. But the there seems to be just an emphasis on rehabilitation, and a lot of times, it's my
Yeah,
my opinion. I got to say, I'm not
yeah,
a psychologist, but I believe there are certain people who are bad. They were born bad, and it's not environmental. They're wired wrong, and they
yeah,
cannot
yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
or they've been steeped in such situations where they will never be good again. It's just not possible for them to adjust to a normal society. And I give a lot of leeway with who I think is adjusted. So it's not like I'm saying you should get rid of everybody, but with some of
True.
these people, you cannot negotiate with them. They do not
Oh, yeah,
speak
yeah,
anything
yeah, yeah.
other
Yeah,
than
the sociopath, or the psychopath or the sociopath, like organized sociopath is like a psychopath who is able to live in society. Psychopath is usually a totally nuts guy who can't adapt to society, who is unable to camouflage the beast.
right.
Whereas a sociopath is able to put the mask on, remove the mask, and actually show you the beast. But some people cannot be rehabilitated. It is impossible to deal with those people. The only The only way to deal with them is to distance yourself and to protect your flock, the people around you, to have them like interned for life, or in case it is unable, you're unable to actually contain them or send them away or imprison them for life. You'll need to do the right thing for your people, even though it's going to take a cost, a personal, emotional, mental, spiritual cost for you, is to actually do the things that has to be done, and it's to end them. And it's not like doing it. Oh, I'm killing bad guys. I enjoy it. It's fucking bullshit. It's just it's like having a rabid dog,
Hmm.
getting close to your kids.
Right.
It's a dog, right? Yeah, it doesn't make all dogs bad, but this particular dog is rabid. I cannot afford to have this dog come back and bite one of my kids, so I will not let it go away. If it
Right.
if you find like a possum that has rabies in your farm, it's the humane thing to do to actually euthanize it.
Right.
So, unfortunately, this is not politically correct, but some people cannot be rehabilitated, like serial killers, serial
Mm.
rapists, pedophiles. You cannot fix those people. And
No.
any attempt of actually trying to fix them, it's basically you're actually doing them a favor because you're helping them learn new ways to manipulate, extort, and destroy human life.
Right. And
Because they're gonna learn how to fool people from the psychologist. Because if they're able to fool a shrink or a psychologist, they'll definitely be able to fool a regular person.
definitely. And there's definitely personality types that have found ways to do that in such a way that not one person in 100,000 can detect them. And
Yeah,
I also like to kind of use the wisdom of old in quotes. And there was a good one from Yagyu Muninori, who's a samurai, and he
yeah,
wrote the life-giving blade. To
yeah.
save 1,000 lives, if you kill one, is it worth it? And the outcome is yes. If this
True, true,
one
true.
person's evil can be stopped now and save the suffering of the greater good, then you absolutely should do that. And I think that there's a strong moral argument to be made for that. And the thing is that a lot of guys who are interested in flirting with violence or want to say they've been there and done that, they're not going to sit and look at the ramifications of this. They're not going to
Yeah,
philosophically justify it. And the ones who do, those are the guys who, we think that we appeal most to, and the ones we'd like to see, embrace this mindset. But it takes more than just the ability or the desire to kill. It takes a lot of philosophy and
yeah,
to truly have the most options, to be resourceful in how you deal with these things. You can't just have one skill set, which is where our name came from, integrated skills. We want to be able to talk. We want to be able to use subterfuge if we have to. We want to be able to use violence. We want to be able to use instruction and
yeah.
mentorship and things like that. So,
Yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. Yeah, like Robert Heinlein said,
mhm.
specialization is for insects. You cannot be specialized. You need to have a broad array of skills. Hey, mind you, you will never be good. Sorry, you'll never be the best at everything, but you can be decent in few things and really good at other things and excellent in a couple more things. But you need to be well-rounded. And
Yes.
no man is an island. You cannot fight the world alone. If you're alone, you're gonna die. In the Civil War, those are the people who actually got robbed and killed were people living alone. Like an old guy living alone, a young tough guy saying, "Oh, I'm the best. I have guns and shit at home." Yeah, they fucking got killed.
Yeah.
You need to work with other people. And if I may go back to the fact, to the thing about using like killing people for good. This is definitely not politically correct,
Yeah.
but sometimes most people say, "Oh yeah, he's a really bad guy. I'll kill him, and I'll feel really good about it." And the thing is, most people forget that this bad guy, he has a mom, he has kids, he has people who actually care about him. So no man is truly a monster, because even the worst serial killer and the worst like I read this, I think, in The Gift of Fear. They actually did a study in prison with like pathological liars, really bad serial rapists, and they actually gave them like a bird to take care of, to care for. And when the bird died, they all cried, and it was not like fake. It was like they actually felt some kind of emotion because they had some kind of attachment to something, and it nobody is like nobody is a robot. You'll always find some form of emotion somehow, somewhere, and but you need to find the key to understand how these people think. But
Right.
all this fancy shit is nothing when this guy is trying to murder you and your family. You just take him out, you kill him. You don't think about maybe his mom will cry. I don't give a fuck about his mom crying. I need to protect myself and my own before I actually think of what's going to happen afterwards. If you
Most,
look at Maslow's pyramid of needs, the most important thing is shelter, food, water, and security. Then you start having self-actualization and philosophy and all this fancy stuff. But
mhm.
the base of the pyramid is shelter, food, security. Then you
Mhm.
start going up and adding other stuff to it.
Well, if you think about how a lot of times these impromptu militias or gangs or things like that form, it's taking people who are vulnerable and bringing them into that, and it's not what we
Yes.
think in in normal modern society as an appropriate like peer group or something. But it absolutely is viable and it works. And if it didn't, we wouldn't have the sudden, spontaneous, and continuous risings of gangs. Where young men find the things that they have to satisfy those basic needs. And when we think about what ISG's purpose is, it's to give a healthy alternative to those people as well as it is to carry on these skills, because those young men need direction, and young women in some cases as well.
Yeah,
So one of the things we
definitely.
hope to do is, help them find that and say, hey, look, you can do this and you can go down that road. And we know what's down there, because a few of
Yeah,
us have been a ways down it ourselves, or you
yeah.
can do this, and sometimes that little bit of help, that little bit of mentorship will change somebody's entire life.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And this is what made me fall in love with you guys and your philosophy. It's you give an alternative to senseless, useless violence.
Hmm. Yes,
And
definitely. That's
yeah,
one of our purposes.
through mentorship, by giving this, you can teach the skills to anyone, but
Hmm.
it don't have the proper contextualization of why those skills are useful, why those skills are needed. If you don't have the moral compass, then you're just basically not doing anything. You're not, because when you say carry the fire, you're actually not just carrying the fire, you're actually carrying what previous generations fought for, died for, including their philosophy, their way of life, and what they considered good or bad.
Right.
So it's not just skills. It's the entire. I'll use the French word for this. It's raison d'être, purpose for living, purpose for being.
Yes, most definitely. And that's one of the things that we view it as such a powerful concept once you really get a hold of it. And when you think about a human lineage, I had this talk with my daughter the other day. We were
Yeah.
talking about how when you think about it, you're the net result of literally billions of years, the Earth's history in years of biological success
Yeah.
for time immemorial. Your lineage has been successful at arriving at sexual maturity, finding a passable spouse,
Mhm.
procreating, and passing along at least some sort of life philosophy. So if we can continue to do that and emphasize on the best characteristics of humans, what we hope to do is provide people who are caught in these situations, and
Yeah.
inevitably we think that's going to happen here as well. Provide them the fire to sit by and stay warm, to light the way for the rest of their tribe and for other people who need that shelter and protection and don't want to resort to just mindless violence.
True. 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 Yeah. By the way, one of your best articles is the one about I forgot the name. Maybe you may want to edit this one out. It's the one about the the grain scheme of things.
The Great Reset.
Talking about talking about the coming ice age. That was
Yeah.
like really awesome. That was a really good article. I fucking loved
Thank you.
it.
It's funny because when we first started putting our material out there, we had some articles like that came out, and other I guess they would be like peers slash competitors would tell us on the side, like, hey, look, you're going to have to trim your articles down because nobody's going to read this. It's too long. You know, people are only going to sit and read for 30 to 45 seconds, and they're not going to sit and read your, 13 or 15 page essay. We had such a phenomenal reception for that article. Read times were, 5, 6, 7 minutes on average. People jumped other pages. So one of the things that we're trying to emphasize is, yeah, there are smart people out there who really do invest their time in reading, and we can reach that audience. And it's important to understand things like that, like on a much grander scale, over 100,000 years or 800,000 years. How do these things look? And we've got to keep in mind that most of the trials and tribulations we face, even though they're everything to us, they're a very small drop in the bucket, the big picture.
Definitely. Yeah. And I actually read this article. It took me like maybe 15 minutes because I read it on my cell phone. So I read most of my stuff on my smartphone. So I always have at least 50 articles pending that I have to read. One of the greatest way of actually getting the good articles to read is Greg Elifritz. He has this weekly knowledge dump. Yeah, I fucking love his shit. Yeah, he has good stuff. Gorilla Fritz. Yes, really good. This is how I discovered you guys, by the way, I think. Through one of his, through one of his articles.
Yeah, Greg is one of the best minds in the industry. I don't say that lightly or just like a gestural thing. He consistently puts out very good content, and anybody who's listening who doesn't already, follow him or his business active response training should definitely go and check him out. He's a great guy.
Definitely, really good stuff. Really good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and he focuses on a lot of the stuff that we find interesting, broad base of skills, competency, doing basic things like traveling, which is another topic I wanted to talk to you about is, having communication skills and the ability to use language in these disasters. Because you're trilingual fluently, and I think that you said that you have some understanding of 5 or 6 languages.
Yeah, I am native in basically in French and Arabic, and I'm fluent in English. I have a working understanding of Spanish, so I can manage somehow. I have a basic understanding of Japanese because I watch animation. So yeah, my dirty secret is out. I started like trying to pick up Russian because to understand like a bit more about like Russian weaponry, Soviet weaponry, because I in terms of armament, I favor the East, like AK platforms, Makarov pistols. I think they're awesome. They give you everything you need in terms of quality, price, reliability, etc., for a cheaper price. At least in Lebanon, like for me to get a Glock in Lebanon, that would be around $2,800. So it's like almost $3,000 to get a Glock 19 Gen 3 used. Whereas I can get a Makarov almost like in really good condition for around $950 or $1,000. So the problem is ammo for the Mac is more expensive than 9mm ammo. So, but because of the war in Syria, and because Hezbollah is being involved in the war in Syria, and like I said before, they may start as like good for their community, and they started stealing every fucking thing in Syria, like all the guns, all the ammo, everything they're stealing there, you find here. You could back in the old days, like 10 years ago, a 5.45 times 39 round used to cost $3 per round. Now it's like 300 liras, 400 liras per round. So it's like maybe 30 cents, 25 cents, from $3 to 25 cents, because they stole the shit out of Syria. You used to be able to, you could never found, you can never, excuse me, you couldn't find Makarov ammo, brand new Makarov. You couldn't find a brand new AK. And we're talking military AKs, like select fire AKs. Now you find them at $700-800, Russian-made AK, Izmash or Tula, in Cosmoline, brand new, made in 1974, 1975 or something, because they have like stocks in Syria. You find them for like $700-800. I was like, and they used to cost like $2,000 maybe 10 years ago.
So the
So it's
black
like,
market in the surrounding conflict zones has really driven the prices locally.
yeah. And you don't have a gun market in Lebanon, like a local legal gun market, except for shotguns, of course. But everything else is black market, and it fluctuates. So depending on supply and demand. And
Mhm.
if you have like right now, the situation is fairly calm, because Lebanon is like, to define Lebanon in a single acronym, it's SNAFU situation, no fucked up. But like right now, the economical situation is really fucked up. But in terms of like security situation, political, it's okay. It's like manageable. Like people aren't shooting at people. A couple of days ago, you had a Salafi, like a Sunni jihadi guy who actually attacked and killed the army in the northern city of Tripoli. Tripoli,
Mhm.
Lebanon, not Tripoli, Libya.
Right.
Different
Yeah.
cities, but both of them are like infested with Salafists, so it's pretty fucked up. So he actually murdered like at least 3 soldiers or policemen. He like threw grenaded them and like sprayed them with AKs, and then he got killed when they actually raided the place where he was barricaded. So situation started going up a notch. Don't forget, northern Lebanon is like it's the border with Syria, and people like back in the old days they used to say, "Oh, Tripoli, we consider ourselves Syrians, not Lebanese." So, yeah. So don't forget, the Islamic State is in Syria. They're being defeated left and right. They need ways of escaping and regrouping. They're doing that in Afghanistan. They're doing that in Africa, and some of them were able to actually escape and hide in Sunni towns in northern Lebanon. Arsal, they got wiped out by Hezbollah there and the army. But a lot of them are finding refuge in Tripoli. They may not be like actual Islamic State fighters, but at least sympathizers are hiding there. And
Right.
when I say Islamic State, it's the same. For me, it's the same. Like saying Al Qaeda, because it's the same fucking religious ideology.
Right.
Uh, so for me, there is not such a big difference. People here say, "Oh no, Islamic states are evil." The the what's their name? They were like Free Syrian Army. They changed the name to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham or something. They're fucking Al Qaeda. It's like
Yeah.
a different flag and shit, but they're fucking Al Qaeda. So they're the same jihadi guys who actually did 9/11. So they're not moderates. I'm sorry. If I find one of them in front of me, I'll shoot him in the head many times just to make sure. But it's like those people are finding refuge here. And because the Sunni community in Lebanon is feeling the blunt of Hezbollah's power, they're turning away from being moderates to being more extremist. So that's gonna make for some fun times, unfortunately. Fun times in a bad way, meaning increase of lone wolf attacks on police and military, etc., etc. So
How does that translate to you now when you take the average person living in the environment that you're in, and I don't think we would quite call it a failed state. Like you said, it's so factioned
no,
and
no,
there's so many interests.
failing state. It's a failing. It's a state that failed in many areas, but it's not a failed state. So you have a lot of economic and underlining political security issues. Security, not so much, because like it's like Hezbollah is behind the scene controlling the situation more or less. There, like you may like I don't particularly like Hezbollah, but they're doing an okay job at not increasing sectarian strife, or at least not doing it in a way that is really like oh, this is like okay. Let me describe Lebanon like a day-to-day operation. It's like basically being in the US in any major metropolitan cosmopolitan city.
Okay.
People are living their everyday lives. They're going out. They're having fun. Pubs and bars and stuff. Everybody's going out. It's like a regular city, extremely polluted because everybody fucking takes their own car to work, and everybody travels from the suburbs to Beirut. So it's like horrible traffic in, horrible traffic out.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of like everyday life for civilians, the majority, the biggest threat you may have is being uh, in basically a victim of interpersonal violence.
Okay.
But
Excellent.
everybody has guns here, or most people have guns here. It may escalate from like a verbal altercation into a fist fight, into a guy drawing a gun or a knife and trying to stick you, shoot you.
Sure.
Very, very, very low probability of actually being involved in a terrorist attack, at least nowadays,
Hmm.
because love them or hate them, Hezbollah did a pretty good job at actually going to Syria and killing a shitload of Islamic State guys who wanted to come over here and do their Islamic caliphate here.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, the reason why we had the Lebanese civil war is because the Palestinians in 1970, yeah, in 1970, they actually got their asses kicked by the Jordanians. They tried to take over Jordan, and the Jordanian armed forces, because they're on legs. They had like the king. It was like it was a homogeneous cultural, political situation in Jordan. The
Hmm.
Jordanian king, the Jordanian king actually ordered the army to shell the Palestinians and fuck the shit out of them. So they actually uh, escaped from Jordan into Lebanon with their guns and gear and stuff. And because here you had this uh, political, religious, sectarian instability, they actually allied themselves to the Sunnis and allied themselves with the other Muslim sects here. And they said, oh, you know what? We're going to get Palestine, Israel, back from Lebanon. So say, oh, we're gonna liberate Jerusalem from Lebanon. And this is why we actually had the civil wars that actually started here. So what happened now is 7, 8 years ago, Hezbollah went into Syria to help the Assad regime fight the Islamic State and the other jihadis, the Al Qaeda guys, and etc. etc.
Hmm.
Which in a way, not it's of course it's uh, the Hezbollah lovers are going to say, oh, we saved Lebanon from the Sunni invaders who wanted to actually transform Lebanon into part of the Islamic State, which is like fucking bullshit because everybody is armed here. Christians, I don't think they're going to sit down and take the Islamic State caliphates without a fight. Hezbollah did actually go there and cull the ranks of the jihadis.
Hmm.
But it doesn't mean that you may not have a local insurrection, especially in the Palestinian camps, who are almost 99.9% Sunnis, to actually fight against the Shia, which is basically the sect of Hezbollah.
Right.
So, yeah, the more people read about the Shia Sunni divide, the more stuff will make sense, and they'll start understanding why we're having those issues here. So, technically, right now, as a Balis civilian, the majority of risk I may face is a guy trying to mug me or kill me for some like bullshit reason.
Uh-huh.
And despite what people think, Lebanon is pretty safe in terms of violence. Of course, you do have violence, and it happens, and depends on the neighborhoods, depends where you was and what you're saying. And of course, if you're in the stupid place at the stupid time with stupid people to do stupid shit, the four stupids of I think Tom Givens, he calls
Yeah.
him the. If it's not John Farnham, I'm not sure if it's John Farnham who actually coined the four stupids or Tom Givens, but one of those two awesome guys that he actually came up with the four stupids. If you're not doing any of those four stupids, and in Lebanon, like one of the stupid thing you can do is going to, let's say, a different culture, religion, neighborhood, and flaunt your own colors. This is pretty stupid. Or put like your like Lebanese forces songs in a Hezbollah stronghold. That's not going to go well. Or yeah, or even if you're a Christian, like with the Lebanese forces going to an area that's dominated by the Aounists, the followers of Michel Aoun, the president, they call them like free patriotic movement, but they're just Aounists. Because once Michel Aoun dies, that's it. It's over. The party
Yeah.
is going to disappear. So if you go there and you put your civil war songs, they're not gonna be very happy, and they're gonna start like stirring shit with you, and it all escalates to guns because everybody got guns here. And when I say guns, I mean select fire rifles, grenades, RPGs, the good stuff.
Yeah. All the stuff that even here in the U.S. we would have to shake our heads and pinch ourselves to make sure we were still awake.
Yeah, unfortunately, the NFA is like fucking bullshit law that was ever written. It's like the more you try to limit people's freedom, the more they'll find ways around it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's so to me, what a lot of this seems like is the very thing that you were talking about before, which is staying gray, staying low profile, knowing the culture. With any sort of situation, knowing the local culture is super important. Knowing where not to go, who not to talk to, and how to speak to people if you have to. So again, we can talk about languages and personal skills and
Yeah,
stuff.
you need to have, yeah, like for example, let me go back to answering your original question, which sorry, I just is the ability to communicate with people from different backgrounds and different cultures and different areas. And it doesn't mean a different language per se. It may be a different dialect. Like, for example, if I'm a guy from New York, I'm going to go to Texas. They're going to recognize my Yankee voice like from a fucking mile away.
So,
But if you take a guy from Alabama and you send him to, let's say, Florida, it's not going to be as much as a
no,
it may not be as much as a shock, but it's still going to show. So the ability to modify the way you communicate with people, even in the same country, are gonna help. Even in the same county or state, like you cannot if you don't understand slang and you're from a like a mid like higher upper or medium class going to a impoverished neighborhood and you're going to start talking uh, like a philosopher king to them, they're gonna start saying, well, what the fuck is wrong with this guy, right? So you need to
right.
be able to adapt your methods, your communication, your speech, the actual words you're actually using to the environment you're in. You're an American guy who is living in one of the states closer to Mexico, and you're unable to speak or at least understand basic Spanish, you need to work on those skills before you buy another fucking AR. Because
Yes.
this is stuff that you're gonna fucking need. Maybe if you go, there's an actually interesting book that I read, written by one second, what's his name? Friedman, the guy from Stratford. I forgot his first name. George Friedman, maybe. I'm not too sure. He wrote a book called The Next 100 Year, in which he basically fantasizes. Well, he doesn't fantasize. He actually thinks. He actually thinks that he's actually prophetizing what's going to happen in the next 100 years. And what he says is, in the next 100 year, Mexican state will have dealt with the cartel, and they will basically be able to actually stand united as one state. They may have created some kind of federation with other South American states, and they'll actually start thinking about taking back Texas
Yep.
and New Mexico and Arizona and other states that historically belonged to the Mexicans. And they'll start doing this basically like the refugees are doing in Europe, or what like other people have been doing, like what the Ottomans did in the Balkans. So basically, you start by a demographic invasion, which then transforms the country little by little over a few generations into a cultural invasion and a linguistic invasion. So, according to this guy, to Friedman, in his book, he thinks that Texas will basically have a mini civil war in the early 2100s or something, because you'll have more people speaking Spanish and more people who actually associate themselves culturally, religiously, and linguistically with Mexico than with the US. So this is, of course, if the US does not devolve into different states based, like, broken down against, like, depending if you're going to have a civil war or not, civil war 2.0. So you have a lot of variables, and a lot of people, like, that philosophize too much about stuff like this. For me, for you, it doesn't really matter, because in 80 years I doubt we'll still be alive, but our kids will be. So it is crucial for us to develop this culture of trying to learn as many languages as you can, trying to read as many books about history, about other cultures, trying to travel, like, for example, like Craig is doing, like Greg Hellefritz, like, traveling around. This is great, because there is actually a French proverb that actually says, la culture, les voyages forment l'esprit. Basically, traveling develops your mind and grows your mind. So it's I think it's pretty much spot on. But if you're unable to protect yourself, and you're not financially stable to get in debt to actually travel around the world like a jackass, that's not the solution to the problem, right? So
Right.
you can travel in your own country, learn about different dialects, different cultures, if you may, learn more about what people are doing in your own neck of the woods before actually going and traveling away. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's stunning to me how many people stay so close to home for their entire lives. I suppose there's some benefit to that, having deep roots within one community. But at the same time, it definitely broadens your horizons. It definitely makes you think about things in a different way. And there's something about being on somebody else's home turf that really emphasizes the requirement of humility when you're dealing with other cultures. You can't afford to be, walking around with swagger because you're not on your own
Yeah.
home turf. And you
And,
can.
and don't forget, the U.S. Embassy is just a plot of land in a foreign country with a building there with a limited number of Marines who I am sure they would love to bring you home, but they're not gonna fucking risk their own lives and the security of the people they're actually protecting inside this embassy, which may be or may not, which may or may not have, like, covert operatives actually trying to do some kind of work for your country to save your ass, because you bought pot off a street corner in a bad place of town, and you actually shanked the dealer because he didn't return your change, which was like something insignificant in local currency anyway, and you ended up in jail, and you're being butt fucked by Ahmed in some Turkish prison. And
Yeah.
people don't fucking want to understand this, that you leave your house, you leave your country, your rules, your regulations, your culture, they don't travel with you. You,
No.
you, you
Absolutely.
leave them home. You just, you're not going to be able to say, oh, I'll just shoot them, because, hey, you know what? Guess what? This is not the 60s, the 70s, or the 80s anymore. Unfortunately, you cannot travel with your fucking gun.
Right. Right. And
So
when you get to whatever place you go, even if you did find a legal means to carry a firearm in another country, the chances of you being caught and absolutely just destroyed by the local legal system is very, very high. Unless you're
yeah,
well connected and have a lot of money, you're not going to be able to buy your way out of that problem just by saying, "Well, I'm an American and I didn't know."
no. You know who's getting out now?
Who's that?
The Syrians, because, hey, he destroys his passport. Hey, I'm a refugee. You can't prove that I'm a refugee from Syria, from Somalia, from Afghanistan, because most people don't know the difference in terms of language, looks, etc., etc., etc. So the people who are actually getting away with murder, literally, are people who are already coming from a place where they know how to hustle.
Yeah.
So, like, the people, they may not be bad guys, right? And when I say Syrian, I mean like refugees overall. Like, most people say, oh, a refugee is Syrian. So, like the Lebanese during the 70s, when we were refugees escaping the civil war. So it's like people who know how to hustle, will be able to get away with a lot of stuff. But you, as a guy who, like a law-abiding citizen from the US, going to a place, even if you do have access to guns and ammo and stuff, and you actually shoot some guy, what are you gonna do? Do you understand the local culture? Do you actually have assets?
Right.
When I say assets, it's not understandable as like, oh, I'm a CIA guy, I got assets, I'm gonna use them or burn them or whatever. It's like a guy, a friend, somebody you can actually talk to, rely on, a guy
Mhm.
who has your back, a guy who can actually teach you about what to do and what not to do in area. Do you actually have this guy who's gonna actually tell you what to do?
Yeah,
So
and in most, I'd say just about every case, the answer is no, because
yeah,
most of the time, travel for Americans is very frivolous. It's kind of become a pop culture thing with, young, wealthy, or at least upper middle class
true.
millennials, where they just go and they backpack and they travel and they see these cultures basically from a distance, and they're able to appreciate them in kind of the same way you would. Like a beautiful woman or something. You see her from a distance, but you don't really have to deal with her temper tantrums or her bad
Yeah,
moods or like that. You just kind of go, you see it, and then you move along. So you don't get to know the intricacies, the day-to-day problems, and the little things that really define a culture. So you kind of come back with some very superficial knowledge of those things, but nothing
true.
like, have you ever had to deal with an attorney who didn't speak English in a
Yeah,
court
yeah.
system that has no fucking clue what Anglo-Saxon law is?
Yeah, yeah, and don't forget, you go to certain places like Afghanistan, which is mostly tribal. So you have the state and you have the law, and then aside you got the tribal law, and you got like if you're stuck in northern Waziristan, uh, 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 the Pakistani state law can't help you because you're stuck in the fucking border regions. You can't do
Right.
shit there. The state is not going to send you a lawyer from they're not going to send you a lawyer from Lahore or Lahore, right? Yeah, Lahore. They're not going to send you some lawyer from Lahore to the Khyber Pass where you shot a guy because he sold you like a fake gun or something
Yeah.
to actually get you out. And even if they do, the tribal elders, they're never gonna fucking forget you.
Right.
They're gonna have a blood vendetta on your ass. So you may go back to this to civilization between brackets, which is like the city of Lahore, into a
Mhm.
nice, fine 5-star hotel, and then you'll just get shot when you're coming out because you didn't see this kid whose uncle you actually killed when he was trying to sell you a gun, and he didn't understand what you wanted in the first place. So
Right.
it's like it's a clusterfuck. So by the way, one of the most important things is you know you can recognize a foreigner in Lebanon extremely easy. And it's not because of the looks, because we got people who are tall, blonde, and with blue eyes here. Because remember, Lebanon was the whorehouse of empires. Everybody invaded us, and everybody fucked with everyone here. So you got fucking redheads, you got blondes, you got brunettes with green eyes, you got really dark skinned guys from like you'd think they're from Egypt or something, or
Yeah.
from Pakistan or something. But it's like, how do you recognize it for in Lebanon? They fucking wear foreigner clothes, meaning
Right.
sandals,
Yeah.
shorts. They don't fucking have a tan, and they're just fucking carrying a huge backpack. You know why? Just fucking wear a pair of jeans and Levi like you do at home
Hmm.
with fucking shoes, and you'll blend just in. The only way people are gonna tell if you're foreigners is if you actually speak your mother tongue, English or French. And even though, because we have most people here speak at least two languages, like French or English, French and Arabic, Arabic and English. Some people actually speak four, like French, English, Arabic, and Armenian, because we got a sizable Armenian population here.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's like you may not even know if this guy is like a Lebanese living abroad back to Lebanon to have fun, which is like he's still a Lebanese, or
Hmm.
some guy from Missouri coming to visit here, but who knows how to dress. So it's all about being the gray man.
Right. One of the things that we talk about privately all the time before we
Yeah,
travel is what are the current trends in clothing? And I don't
yeah,
mean
yeah,
fashion. I don't mean like what are the wealthy people wearing? I'm talking about what kind of hats are the local common males wearing? What kind of
Yeah,
jeans are they wearing? Slacks or whatever else. You can really go a long ways towards blending in by abandoning what you know and just
yeah,
taking a few hours and looking and doing some research on what's selling in Germany or whatever else. So
yeah. One of the best resources. Well, it's not really the best resource, but it's the most accessible one, and it will give you a baseline, which is what you need. You need to establish a baseline. It's the CIA Word Fact Book. You just
oh
go
yeah.
to the CIA Word Fact Book, you read the shit out of the country, and then you start googling stuff. One of the ways, if you want to go and have fun into a country, is to actually start looking for fancy restaurants and fancy nightclubs and pubs and bars and stuff like this. This will give you basically an understanding of what do high income people do in this country. Then you start looking for cheaper uh, stuff in this country, and you'll be able to understand what more frugal people or middle class people are actually doing and wearing and going. So nowadays you got so much power in the tip of your palm, sorry, in the palm of your hand, the tip of your fingers, with the smartphone. You can research and get a shitload of information about anything, and most people don't use that, which is a shame.
But yes, and in the age of Yelp and everything else, you can sit and look at pictures of what are the other diners wearing. What are the things that you see consistently, in terms of how do people present themselves. And there's a lot of different nuance to studying that. And sorry, hang on just a second here. There's a lot of different nuance, but the the CIA World Factbook is a favorite of mine. I always pretty much start there anytime I want to know, like, hey, what's going on in this country? What languages am I looking at? What are the demographics?
So,
What are the ethnicities and the religions and things like that? It's a very helpful resource.
but what if I may interject a bit? The CIA fact book, don't forget, it's written by people who may have an agenda. So you
Oh,
have no idea. Yeah. So this guy, the CIA, the actual analyst who wrote the stuff, has no idea if his asset in country is peddling some bullshit to actually affect American policy in this area in a specific way. This is why, although it is a really good resource and you will learn a lot of stuff, always try to establish a baseline by using Google Street View or something. Like, see what people are doing. Actually, try to watch shows from this country. Like one of the this is a really good TV show. Like, it's a good TV series. It's based on what's going on in Lebanon on the border region with Syria.
mhm.
It's called El Haiba, and you can find it on Netflix. It's called so basically, I'll spell it: space Haiba, Hayba, and it's
Okay.
basically a fictional town in the Bekaa Valley that is extremely similar to Baalbek, which is a town that is mostly Shia uh, in the Bekaa Valley. It also has a sizable Christian population in the area, at least maybe not in the city. But this actual series shows you basically, it's like Narcos but Lebanese version. It actually shows you how people actually live here, and they actually work in the drug business, in the smuggling business, etc., etc. It's a good series if people just want to watch something and like have fun, and it gives you a lot of information about the culture, the language. So you get used to hearing the language. You start picking up, especially series like this, like on Netflix originals, like for example, the Israeli TV series Fauda and Hamid Rasha, which are really good series, by the way. Those series and Lebanese series like El Haiba, they'll actually immerse you a bit in the culture and the language, and you'll start picking up words because it's subtitled. It's in original language. Always watch it, by the way, in original language, subtitled in English. This way, you'll start understanding and pick up words. Do this before you actually travel to the region, to the country, and it will help with like gaining a solid understanding of why people do things in specific ways in certain areas of the world.
Sure, sure. And just to kind of tie that together with the biases that you find in official or state level resources. You always
Yeah,
verify those things and cross-reference them, like you're saying. Learn a little bit about what the culture is doing in terms of its entertainment. Learn a little bit about what it's doing in terms of the affluent or the impoverished. Try to make some friends there. It's really not that hard these days.
yeah,
Just
true.
to find somebody who's willing to talk a little bit about their culture. Most people abroad are pretty friendly. There's kind of a it's I guess maybe it's becoming cliche in both ways now, because a lot of people will tell me everybody's happy to see Americans. And traditionally, most of the people I've ever come across, yeah, it's never been a problem. But
Yeah,
you have the other camp that thinks that everybody, secretly wants to shank Americans or rob them. And the truth is somewhere in the middle. Everybody, anywhere you go, is a human being, and they kind of react to
yeah,
their own biases. And if you know what to look for, just from a nonverbal cues perspective, you can probably do most of the talking without ever saying a word. But
yeah,
it's very interesting to hear you say those things, because really a lot of the familiarization that you can do with a country you can do by watching how do the people act, how do they speak, you know what I mean, because you can look at the words and transliterate and things like that, but when you see somebody else speaking it, and when they're trying to present in a certain way, it kind of emphasizes just the way that people
true.
communicate.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. So nowadays, you cannot have an excuse. If you want to travel, you need to pick up a few words in this language, at least basics like help, help. I'm getting mugged, raped, getting shanked. I'm getting I don't know, like somebody's trying to scam me. How do I get to the airport? How do I get to the U.S. embassy? Like really basic stuff. Saying I like your language, but could we continue this conversation in English if you can? It's always good, and it's always important to remember uh, history. What I mean by history is that like a lot of Africa, a lot of African countries have French as a second language.
Sure.
Angola has Portuguese as a
Mhm.
second language. So if you go to Angola and nobody's understanding English, but you start talking to them, you say, "Estando falando português," and they'll start picking up. Like, "Oh yeah, we speak Portuguese," and they'll start talking with you a bit. If you go to let's say for former colonies, like for example, Lebanon used to be a French colony. If you find yourself in Lebanon, you will at least find somebody who understands French if they don't understand English. Uh, same with for example, Syria, because it was also a French mandate. If you go to Iraq, or if you go to Iraq or Iran, English is going to be the language of choice, because they were under the British mandate for a while. Um,
Right.
so
Actually
yeah,
pretty good relations with the West and the United States up until the 70s as well. So it's
yeah,
amazing, how persistent those things can be. And I suppose we're getting kind of towards the tail end. Most of the people who were alive then were getting older and such. But yeah, it's easy to forget how fast alliances shift.
true, 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 true. Today's enemy, tomorrow's friend.
Right.
And but at the same time, if you're like in a really fluctuating region like the Middle East, today's allies, tomorrow's enemy. So the
Sure.
only the only allies technically the only allies are enemies. So you gotta be wary, but it's never wrong. It's never wrong to pick up another language, at least to understand how not really the bad guy, but let's simplify it. Let's be a bit Manichaean here. I think at least understand how the bad guy thinks and acts, and understands what makes him tick. Why does he feel very strongly about this way instead of that way? Once you do that, once you liberate yourself emotionally from the shackles of your own culture, religion, political, ideological background, and you look at it with an open, actually not open mind, active mind, because you still have your bullshit filters on. You start understanding why these people are actually uh, working, operating, and doing things they do their way, right? And the most important thing is to go back to history. History never
Yes.
lies. Like people say, oh, the Iranians are really aggressive, blah blah. But if you go back to history, you understand that Persia always was some kind of maybe not major empire, but at least a sizable power in the region.
Sure.
And you need to understand why is it trying to expand. Like if you let's take an example that most people can relate to, because if I give the examples of Israel and Iran, people are gonna start saying, "Oh, no, no, you're talking shit about stuff that you don't really understand about." Let's, we don't understand about, or you're using something that's very politicized. So let's take a very simple example. Let's go back to understanding the Soviet Union. Like there is absolutely no difference in terms of territory size from the old Russian Empire to the Soviet Union to modern Russia. Russia always has been the only problem with Russia is that it's a fucking plain.
Yeah.
And they have no fucking mountains. So how do you prevent an army from going from, let's say, France, like Napoleon did, from France to Moscow, well, or to St. Petersburg? The only way you can do that is to increase the size of the territory and make sure that people get delayed so that they have to face the Russian winter, which is the
Yes.
only thing that actually saved them. Because hey, Russia is like huge, and Siberia is part of Russia. But who's going to go and live in Siberia, right? It's like
Right.
fucking -50. What the fuck? It's like if
Yeah.
I tell you, I'll tell you, you have the opportunity to live in Florida and in Alaska. Would you want to fucking go to Alaska unless you got a fucking death wish and you're like your balls frozen? I'm talking about I give you a shitload of money. You don't have to work. You don't just have to live. Uh, La Vida Loca, and I tell you, choose. You want to be in Florida or you want to be in Alaska? Of course, like Florida, UK, you got like hurricanes and shit. I think no, not hurricanes, but yeah,
Big jail.
you do have some stuff, some natural disaster. So if I give you the choice between Bumfuck, Alaska, or Bumfuck, Florida, and you don't have any issue, would you rather live in the cold or live like in a place that somehow you can still like go outside and not die?
Oof, man, I got to be honest with you. I lived in bumfuck Florida for a while. It wasn't a whole lot better, but
Yeah, well,
I
yeah,
get your point.
yeah, because yeah, it's the humidity, the humidity kills,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah.
it can be brutal, but I don't mind the cold weather, but I totally understand what you're saying. And yes, in terms of buffering your empire, there's definitely a huge element of geography. Uh, in fact, it would be a really interesting conversation to revisit at some point, just how geography has shaped world conquest and who's become prominent in terms of like the early Phoenician sailors onto the Europeans, and the small warming and cooling trends that have affected agriculture and everything else. I mean, there's tons we could talk about there. And it would definitely help strengthen our understanding of what the future would probably hold. But um, for
Uh, go,
now,
going back quickly to languages,
uh-huh.
I think it's like shocking. Okay, yeah, you say okay, most people should learn at least understand Spanish as a second language because hey, you like especially if you're in the border states. But a lot of people, and this is like shocking, they're not even curious about relearning or revisiting the ancient Native American methodologies.
Sure.
Languages may not be really useful on a day-to-day basis, but hey, that's the only fucking code. Navajo was the only language, the only code the Germans were not able to break during
Mm.
World War II. So what's wrong with picking up like like a skill set or a language or at least some form of uh, uh, some approach and actually learn from people who were actually here before settlers came in. So
Most definitely.
this is like yeah, this is something that I wanted to like just ramble about a bit because it's interesting.
Oh, I think so too. I think that language skills are drastically underrated because we're so insulated in North America that most of our Canadian neighbors speak English. We have obviously Spanish to our southern border, but if you're anywhere north of maybe I don't know, really northern Texas, Oklahoma, you're probably not going to have to deal with a lot of it unless you're on the West Coast. But and by now, a lot of the Mexican immigrants have already kind of naturalized.
Yeah,
So it's interesting to hear you talk about like the displacement of the Palestinians into Lebanon when
Yeah,
we kind of the same migration happening. There's so much
yeah,
dysfunction in South America that we have Latin Americans coming into America, but they're not nearly as hostile for the most part. It's just seeing the way that demographics are going to shift. It's going to behoove people to at least be able to communicate. And again, within the ISG framework, we want to be able to
yeah,
take people and say, hey, look, here's the options. Here's how you do some stuff. This will be useful for you.
yeah,
You come here, we'll help you learn how to do these things. So.
yeah.
So yeah, in conclusion, are there any things that you would like to mention, from your experiences, living in a civil war for 15 years? Well, I guess for you it's about 10, but
Yeah.
living in that environment, what are some of the myths or things that you would like to emphasize? I really, it hits close to home to me when anybody's like, yes, clean water, because I think that's
Yeah,
that sanitation.
yeah, that's fucking crucial.
Yeah,
One of the things that most people forget is that you may be a millionaire, but if your money is stuck in the bank, or if it's just stuck in terms of assets, and you have absolutely no way of transferring this into cash, you're as rich as the guy next door. So
sure.
it's always good. Like people say, oh, I only buy gold. Yeah, well, you know what? Gold is good as a backup for your financial wealth, but it's not. You cannot eat it. You cannot cook with it. You cannot use it except if you cast it into bullets. But yeah,
Right.
that's gonna be a pretty expensive way of shooting bad guys. But
Yeah.
you need to have the ability. Like to transform your wealth into cash. So having a good amount of cash, uh, like in local currency, small bills, medium bills meaning like okay, so you need to have like a diverse denomination of bills, like $1, $5, 10, 20, 30. Sorry, you don't have any 30, 50, 100, etc., etc. You have them. You have this amount of money. You should have at least a couple of $1,000 worth of savings at home.
Yes.
Of course, you should have like guns and ammo, food, especially water, medicine. Like
Yeah.
if you're able to go to Canada and buy antibiotics that will probably the life of your kids, I don't think anything is morally wrong with doing that. If you're unable because of some bullshit state regulation of actually buying those antibiotics and actually keeping them in your house to protect yourself in case you're some kind of collapse happens and you have to take care of of your kids or of yourself. Um, a really good fictional account of what would happen in a total collapse scenario is actually to read the 1 second after his first name. I got it. William Forstchen. You have 1 second after the second day and the final day. 1 year, 1 second after, a year after, and the final day. Really good way of actually talking about what happens in terms of collapse, and he goes into details. It's like a really good book, and it's very poignant because he talks about death and loss and the inability to provide for your family in a total collapse situation.
All
In
right.
terms of in terms of myths, we said before that most people expect that they're gonna be on the balcony or on the roof of their houses shooting at looters and stuff. Well, this worked for the Koreans in the LA riots because the state was not far behind, and the state came back and reestablished its authority on the community. But in a civil war situation, going on your balcony and shooting at people, this is the best way to get a nice RPG round in your face, or at least a couple of dozens of 7.62 times 54R rounds in case you're talking Soviet bloc weapons, or 5.56 like a belt felt 5.56 or whatever. So be the gray man. You have weapons. You keep them safe. You carry your handgun, and your handgun is your lifeline. Like what's his name? Not Travis Haley. Chris Costa said, It's your lifeline. This is what you have with you. It's discreetly carried against all this open carry bullshit because it will just get attraction down to you.
Right.
You can make a political point in much smarter ways than open carry. So your weapon is concealed on yourself when you're going to your business. Don't do stuff that you wouldn't do in a regular situation. Don't do them in a civil war situation. Don't do them in a civil strike situation. Don't do them when you're having some kind of unrest. This is regarding some of the myths of living in a civil war situation. Make sure you have food and water, but eventually they're gonna run out. So you need to have money. You need to have protection, like guns and ammo and stuff. You need to have a community that is going to actually step up and help you survive. And you need to have the ability to move from one area to another without being a refugee. So having a secondary location, distant relatives that you're going to go and visit. And this is why it's really good to start developing your family ties. You have a brother that you never speak with over some bullshit thing that happened 15 years ago. Mend the fucking relationship, because you never know if you're going to have to take your kid and your wife and your stuff and put everything in a 4x4 and actually drive half across the country to go to a place that has better water, better sanitation, access to food and medicine, and at least a semblance of order.
Yeah. When it comes to community, I think that's one of the things that people functionally just misunderstand. You can have a mentality of being a competent individualist, but also understand, like, doesn't matter how good you are at what you do, you can't do everything as well as somebody else. And having somebody who can dedicate and bridge and kind of layer the levels of resiliency, that's really what we're after, is like find somebody who's a good mechanic but learn how to wrench. Find somebody who's a doctor but understand some basic first aid and CPR. Be a competent shooter but know who your guys are who've been there and done that. Those are the things that really separate the the fantasy from the reality, in my opinion, when it comes right down to it.
The most important thing was understanding community. Your community is not your buddy. What I mean by this, it's not a guy that you know from the office and you playing together and you have fun together. You need to test your relation. You need to test this friendship. The most important thing in a community member is utter reliability. If the person is not reliable with small things like, he promises that he's going to be awake at 7 a.m. and you're going to go shoot with him at 8, and you actually cleared your day so you can actually go and help him develop his skills, and he actually calls you at 2 p.m. after you tried to call him multiple times because he was drunk out of his mind and he didn't even fucking put his alarm up. This is a guy that I don't want in my team.
Right.
I may test him multiple times, like different levels of intensity. Sometimes you test him for big stuff and you say, oh, he's not reliable for really important stuff. But maybe we can help each other in a bit like smaller endeavors. Like for example, help me out in case I need cash and I'm unable to get to my cards because I forgot my wallet at home. You test people with small things, with larger things, and with important stuff. And it doesn't have to be a real emergency. It can be a fake emergency, ones that you created just to see if the person is actually on par with, because everybody says, hey, I'm your buddy, and I'm going to be with you in case shit hits the fan. I got a guy who actually said this to me. Like, I know him pretty well. And I tested him over many years, and he is totally unreliable. And he may be reliable occasionally, but hey, if I want occasional reliability, I'll get an AR. So I want reliable from top to bottom. I want utter reliability. So this is why I go for an AK.
Yeah, you're in good company there. I think we're pretty well known as the dudes who are running AKs, and still not
Yeah.
many people are these days. Everybody's all about their ARs, and here there's some benefits, but yeah,
Uh,
I
one of the
just
things, one of the things about ARs is that because they're so popular in the US, you don't have to worry about the logistics. This is one of
right,
the reasons most people love them. It's not
yeah,
because like it's a really good platform. I think it's a crappy platform that is not reliable. It works if you got like the entire you have the logistics behind it. It will work just fine.
sure.
But yeah,
Yeah, I always one of my favorite experiences with the M4 was when I was qualifying. Once we did when we did our range days when I was still in the military, we did a very long day. It was like 16 hours because we had to go and we had to qualify rifle and then do all of our night firing.
yeah,
And the next day we'd come out and we'd do all of our handgun work. So I was out I was about midway through our regular qual right before we went to the automatic portion, and I did a reload and I started getting nothing, and I was trying to extract brass and nothing came out.
yeah,
So I dropped down, I start clearing the rifle, taking the magazine out and pulling it apart. What had happened is a piece of a branch had been stuck in my chest rig, and it had
yeah.
impacted the PMag. So when I went to chamber around, it pulverized in the delta ring, and because the pulp was all around the rim of the 5.56, it couldn't get any grip. I had to ram a rod down the barrel and tap it out,
Damn.
the bolt back, and tap the bullet out, so it didn't go off. It was a mess. And I've shot AKs that were less reliable and had malfunction.
Yeah.
Every gun, if you push it hard enough, is going to malfunction.
True, true, true. A gun in the end is it's just a mechanical device created by man. So of course it's not going to be perfect. Like people say, oh, Glock perfection, Glock perfection. Yeah, you know what? If it was Glock perfection, they wouldn't fucking have made a Gen 5, right?
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah. And actually Gen 5 is basically Gen 2
Right.
with a couple of minor tweaks. So yes, any gun will break. AK will break. If you don't clean your AK after shooting it through the mud for 5,000 rounds in Africa, yeah, of course you're gonna have a corroded barrel, but it will still function. But you will have crap accuracy. But the thing is, you minimize you guys, yeah, when you used to be in the military, you used to use the acronym PACE, right? And I love it. It's like primary, alternative, contingency, emergency.
Mm-hmm.
I know that my AK is going to work through the first three parts of the PACE acronym. It's gonna work perfectly fine if I clean it. It's gonna work really well if I take care of it. If I don't really take care of it, it will only jam if I use like really crappy ammo. And the only time it will break is if like you totally uh, irresponsibly abuse it, because
Right.
like even in Africa you can take a type 56-1 which was made in the late 50s, okay, and you will still find one in Africa that will work after being shot gazillions of rounds.
Yeah.
But of course everybody would rather have an AKS 74U fresh out from Tula,
Right.
last year production 1993, and select fire, and you take care of it and shit. But hey, you fight with what you have. And one of the posts that you had on Instagram, Glock versus 1911s, you said, I'll use what I find and what I can.
Yeah.
And this is where, yeah, I tell people, don't get fucking attached to the platform. You use what you can. Like, of course, I'd rather have a Glock 19, but at $3,000 for a gun, I'd rather buy like two max, $1,000 each, and a shitload of ammo and mags, and train the shit out of it with one gun, and keep another one as a backup instead of just paying all the money for just one gun.
Right.
So
Right. When you're in an environment where a confiscation or something like that isn't just a peripheral possibility. It's a reality. If you get stopped at this
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
whatever whims of the authorities, they might just take it anyway. It doesn't
yeah,
make sense to be out there with a $3,000, $3,500 gun unless it's just a showpiece. And for a lot of guys, that's what it is, and that's fine. It's just not my life. We kind of advocate getting away from that, but if you intend to use these things, you're better off with a $400 or $500 pistol that's serviceable and functional in the U.S. You can get those all day long. And Glock, if you don't like them, they're not the only game in town anymore. There's M&Ps, there's VP9s, there's SIG makes decent pistols.
But to jump on the striker fired bandwagon, you know how much a VP9 costs in Lebanon?
How much?
It's around $6,000. So fuck
smokes.
Yeah, and just to put stuff in context, the average income in Lebanon is around $600. That's the average monthly income. So you can see how how long you'd have to save to actually get a VP9. So
right.
I think it's a waste. It's literally a waste because a Glock works exactly as well as a VP9. Okay, it may not be as sexy. It may not be as German in terms of engineering. It's Austrian, but hey, but at least you can get two for the price of one of the others. If you can get a gun and if you actually train properly, even like I don't really particularly love double action, single action handguns, but what I love about them is you can do 5-on-1 drills like the one taught by Paul Howe, which is an amazing instructor. So you do the 5-on-1 drill, so you 5 dry fire, 1 live fire. Even if you don't have money for ammo, what you can do actually is this is something I've been experimenting around a bit for the last couple of weeks. Is you can actually find and buy handgun primers. I like Cellier and Below ones because they're really good quality. And after you shoot your rounds, right? After you shoot your 9mm or whatever, you can just basically use a hot glue gun and fill the case. After you remove the primer, you fill the case with the hot glue, regular hot glue gun, right? And then you prime it, you reprime it. And Glocks and Makarovs are the only two guns who will actually chamber spent casing. So you can actually create your own simunition at home. Of course, if you shoot at someone, it's gonna hurt like fucking hell because even though it's like just the primer, it's gonna sting. It'll probably rip some flesh. But you can train at home. You can train inexpensively. You got absolutely zero fucking excuses not to train. You can actually there's some kind of device that was out on the market that allows you to actually replace the trigger group in a Glock 19 or Glock 17, and it will actually reset.
Yes.
You can actually buy and put lasers in your gun, and actually when you shoot it, it will just point a laser at a laser max thing. I think. Like I would fucking kill to get one of those in Lebanon, but we can't. So I have to improvise. Yeah, so I got to improvise. Improvisation is the mother of invention. So you'll find ways of dealing with stuff. Like I created this the hot glue thing. I'm doing it because I can actually shoot my J-frame inside my house without disturbing anyone and without attracting attention because you never know. You're gonna get a guy who's gonna call the authorities, say, "I heard some shooting inside the apartment building." So yeah, that would not go. That would not go well. So yeah, if you can't afford to go to the range, you absolutely have zero reason not to dry fire. At least dry fire, man. So yeah,
I'm a huge supporter of that idea, and I think that if you're not doing a few hours of dry practice a week, you're probably cheating yourself. And I don't know, you've probably seen, but a lot of times the way we'll do it is we'll work it right into our workouts, do calisthenics, pull-ups, push-ups, dry practice, and then sit-ups, lunges, dry practice, and then when we're finished with 3 sets of doing the cycles, we'll go and we'll hit other fine motor skill tasks like can you still perform a suture, can you still pick a lock, etc.
Yeah. By the way, lock picking, this is a skill that most people who actually teach self-defense absolutely ignore, and I think it's a shame because you have a probability of being abducted if you get beaten up by a crowd of people because hey, they got you. They will find ways of actually exploiting you being unconscious. They'll try to steal your organs. You have no fucking clue who the bad guys are because it may look like a regular fist fight and it ends up with you being unconscious and you have no idea what they're going to actually do to you. So if you don't understand escape and evasion from restraints of any type, actually you start looking at what's going to happen in your area. So duct tape, zip ties, etc., etc., handcuffs, etc., etc. Basic lockpicking, all those stuff. I'm not saying you dedicate a class every week to those, but you should at least practice them at least once in a while. And this is also part of your toolkit of your skill sets that need to be integrated in what you're able to do.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing about lockpicking is I always hear that, people they think it's illegal, which in most places it's not, or they think it's like a criminal skill. But I can't tell you how many times it's helped me or a friend or a coworker or something out of a jam just because it's a simple skill. It doesn't take up much space to hold on to. And most locks are pretty easy to defeat, and with a little bit of practice, most people can knock those things out in a few minutes. And it's just a useful thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, on that note, George, I'm thinking we probably better wrap it up. We've got 2.5 hours,
Sure.
and I think
Yeah.
what we should do is get back together and do another one and talk about some of these other topics.
Anytime. Yeah, we can go into a bit into more depth into about hand-to-hand combat and philosophies that we have, which is a bit different from what most people do. And looking forward to working with you guys again, talking with you guys again. It's truly an honor to be on with you. You guys are like I really love what you guys have been putting. So I'm a big fan of your work. So to be on this podcast was like it's a dream come true.
Oh, well, thank you. It's our honor and our pleasure. I mean, we were really happy as soon as we saw that, we had a like mind here who had some really interesting things to say. We're very pleased to have you, and it's been a great conversation. For anybody listening, how can they look you up? Tell us a little bit about how they can contact you or read more of your information.
Okay, they can check out my website, which is www.salvosmodum.com. SALVOSMODUM.com. It's Latin for survival method because, hey, this is what we teach. It's a survival method. Lots of skills integrated all together, kind of like ISG, but
Yep.
in Latin.
To us as kind of brother concepts. So I'll also put that in the show notes so anybody can just see it and they can have a link.
Sure.
And hopefully this will send some traffic your way too, because as much as we like the idea of bringing people into our fold, we know we're not the only voice out there, and there's other people who have things to offer, and we think that you have quite a lot yourself. So thank you again, George. I really appreciate you being on the show. I had a great time talking with you, and let's do it again sometime.
Definitely, brother. Thank you a lot. It was an honor and a pleasure.
All right.